Welcome to the Armani Talks YouTube channel. I'm your host, Armani Talks. In this channel, I'm covering communication skills for you to level up your way with words and become much more articulate. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the importance of studying history as an adult. With a lot of the classes that we were taught in school, whether it's psychology, biology, history, social studies, etc., it may have seemed like a waste of time in school because a lot of individuals at that age, they don't have that much life experience. So what happens is that they're memorizing a lot of these names, a lot of these dates, a lot of these formulas with the main intention of passing an exam. They're not doing it for curiosity. It's more so because it's a chore. But I found something very strange. As I started to get older and as I started to work on the ARMANITALKS.com business, one thing I've noticed is that I have organically found myself getting very curious about the same subjects that I used to learn in school, whether it's psychology, whether it's mathematics, and history. The reason that history is a topic that's very important, which as an adult you may undermine, the first narrative may be like, well, what do I need to learn about a bunch of old dead people for? Right? It's a complete waste of time. And I would say that that's a mistake. The reason that that's a mistake is because when you study history, what happens is that you develop your perspective. And once you develop your perspective, there's a stunning realization which occurs. The stunning realization is that you are not going through unique problems. You are going through problems that have been faced by someone else before, just in a different context. And you can apply the same way that they handle the problem into the context of your life. And more importantly, a lot of times studying history in the effective way gives you courage. Because how do you exactly get courage? You get it from clarity. So when you see, you're like, oh, wait a minute, this problem that I thought was only unique to me is not unique to me. This dude from 100 years ago went through the same exact problem, and look at him. His problem was actually worse if we're factoring in the environment at that time, and he handled it like such a winner. I too can handle it like a winner. That level of clarity and courage is truly priceless. But here's the thing. To learn history, you could study textbooks. And this is going to be the first thing that a lot of people are like. They're like, I'm going to study textbooks on history. Heck, I'm going to get a lot of the textbooks that I was forced to get in school, which I think is an optimal route. But I'm not here to give you the optimal route. I'm here to give you the underrated route. So I was, for some reason, I got very curious about this gentleman named Wilt Chamberlain, who was a larger-than-life basketball player in the 50s and 60s. And when I say larger than life, I mean physically as well. He was roughly 7 foot tall, and due to his height, he saw life from a completely different lens than someone who's the average height, let's say 5'9" to 5'10". And his perspective on life was very unique. I initially came for basketball, but the more that I heard him talk, I learned more about just different parts of his life. One part that stood out to me was there was this game, a very important game that he was supposed to play for his career, but something very bad happened during the time span of this game. Martin Luther King got shot. And what happens in this book is that Wilt begins talking about the grieving process of what it was like to lose Martin Luther King. And the way that he was breaking it down gave me a completely different angle of the 50s, the 60s, the 70s that I probably wouldn't have gotten from a textbook. I was getting a very personal side of the matter. Because leading up to the death of Martin Luther King, what happened was Wilt was talking about his childhood, his upbringing, and the place that he was from. He didn't necessarily get too much racism I mean, there was certain comments that he got every now and then, but due to him living in that middle class area, he didn't get too much racism. But he did recall a certain moment when he was one of the best players in college, Kansas to be exact. And after he was done with the game, he was starving. And he goes to this particular restaurant, and the person that's supposed to serve him is like, "Sir, I know you're a great basketball player, but technically this is a whites only restaurant. We're going to have to ask you to leave." And Wilt, like, he got comments before, but he wasn't asked to leave a restaurant like that, especially considering his stature. And at first he thought this was a joke. But once again, the person was like, "Gotta leave. I'm really sorry. I'm a big fan of your games, by the way, but you gotta leave. We can't serve you." So Wilt had this personal experience with racism. And when he saw and he was living through the process of Martin Luther King getting shot, he was talking about it from a very personal narrative. And whenever we consume content from personal narratives versus just the lecture format, like on this particular day, Martin Luther King died, versus we're seeing the grieving process, we're seeing how the country is reacting, the world is reacting, this path makes the information stickier. And when the information is sticky, it becomes much more likely that we're going to apply this information in context to our lives. So I would say that one underrated way to learn about history is to see which era is making you very curious. For some reason, I was very curious about the 50s and 60s. I'm like, were these people really old school, or were they like people as well? This was a weird curiosity to have, but it was a curiosity regardless. And I was like, who was a larger than life figure in the 50s and 60s? And boom, I narrowed in on Wilt Chamberlain. And a lot of these dudes and dudettes have autobiographies. And from that autobiography, I was able to get that personal narrative of what the 50s and the 60s was like. So I would recommend you find out which era is making you curious. See if there's an autobiography. If not, if there's a biography. And this will allow you to engage the personal narrative of history. And it will better allow you to see how history applies to your life in a practical way. Thank you very much for joining the Armani Talks YouTube channel. And I'll catch you next time.